Welcome, 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 everybody. So good to see everybody here. Welcome to our very first all members meeting for SSPI-WISE and our first meeting of the new SSPI-WISE year. Very happy to have everyone here. Very happy to have the Mentorship Working Group leading us in a conversation on the topic of mergers and acquisitions. Resiliency in uncertainty. Anybody been through this? Because seriously, if you've ever lived through this is a scary thing, as evidenced by this very scared looking woman. But our mentorship team is going to help us have some zen around this topic. Okay. Andrea, I think that I'm going to stop sharing right now and I'll come back to the other slide, or am I going to go to the next slide first?
No, leave that one. And then Tamara, I'm sorry for an admin thing. Can you quick send the link to Wendy? She can't get in.
Yes.
She needs the link again, just straight to her. Thanks.
Okay. So
Okay.
I want to come out and maybe have someone else do controls while I do the back behind the scenes send things to people.
Justina, can you take over to once I intro this and put up the second slide?
Sure.
Great. Thank you. I'll just do a quick intro. I'll do a quick intro and then we can switch to the other slide as well. Assuming we have a few people on. 18, might hopefully get more, but 18. So as Tamara said, this is a subject that is very timely actually now, because there's been a lot of M&A activity. Actually, I told somebody I was doing a thing on M&A and they said, mixed martial arts? And I said, no, I clearly need to enunciate more clearly. But it's not that different. So what we want to do this morning is to talk a little bit about dealing with this uncertainty, how to help provide some ideas of some tools to help develop resiliency, and to help you go from this woman who's freaking out to a somewhat more, what I say, go from eek to om, and go to a more confident and less stressed situation. And to do that, we're going to have a few people talking, and hopefully we'll get some other people to chime in as well. And now, Justina, we can switch over to the other slide.
I'll do it because I'm still sharing.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. So, and this is not necessarily about being on the autism spectrum with the puzzles, but the idea is putting together the pieces of the puzzle to help you develop resiliency in uncertain times. And we're going to have a couple of different perspectives on this. Liz Stanley is someone who dealt with a lot of these things, and I'm going to just outline kind of the situations that we're addressing early on in her career, before she was in the satellite industry, in terms of both layoffs and downsizing and layoffs, which is another side of the coin, as well as merger and acquisition activity. And that's one set of situations. And she can talk about dealing with that in particular from the perspective of a more junior person, and looking at these 4 points here of duty over dilemma, the tools, how to avoid a lot of the gossipy things, and how to respond to management. And then Wendy Lewis is going to talk from the perspective of a more senior satellite industry and space industry professional, assuming that she actually manages to get in, because she doesn't seem to be on the call yet, and who has been through a number of different merger and acquisition situations, from both sides of the merger, if you will, or the acquisition. So we'd like to have people come up with questions. If you put in the chat, if you want to ask a question, you always have to put the question in the chat, but put that you have a question, or if you have a perspective that you would like to share, and then I will call on you and ask you to chime in, because we do want this to be interactive. So with that, I'll ask Liz to start and talk through these key points.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. And want to definitely thank Tamara and Vinny, Wendy, Andrea, and Mary for allowing me to put my 2 cents into this. The idea came from our mentoring group, and somebody asked for a topic dealing with the changes around M&A activity and the uncertainty that goes with it. So I was thinking back to a time when I was directly impacted working as a relatively junior employee for a Fortune 500 company that experienced a series of 4 or 5 layoffs. I was new to the region and kind of newish to a team. And how in the world did I survive that? And I thought about it and reflected. Now, as a more experienced employee, I thought I could break some of those things down and share it with you. So resiliency is defined, or at least I define it, as the ability to bounce back, change, adapt, and maneuver to keep going. So a couple of things that helped me were to develop a sense of duty, which is an attitude. And I think it probably pre-existed before the layoffs started occurring. It is really that inner drive and that attitude that gets you out of bed on rainy days, bad weather days, and keeps you going. I will say that it's also a belief that you're part of an organization or a system that's bigger than just you. So one of the things that I did is I would not only monitor my metrics, and I was in a very metric-driven organization and role at that time where I knew what I had to do each day. I knew the activities I was responsible for each week, and I looked at the overall financials of the company, and the sales of the top tier products were declining. Mine were in the top 1%. So I knew that I needed to keep doing whatever I was doing. And so, for example, what that meant was if I was responsible for 8 to 10 meetings a week during that period of time where this is going on, I would do 8 to 11 meetings a week. And I used a tool called deflection, which is the ability to sort of pivot a conversation or pivot a mindset around back to where it needs to be. It's kind of like a shield that nobody can see. So when colleagues or teammates would approach me with the worry and the angst that was natural, I would definitely, be empathetic and listen, because that's a stressful situation for everybody, but then not dwell on that too long and then just turn the conversation back to what our team goals needed to be. The other thing that I did is avoided the water cooler. And I realized after I wrote this that there may be some folks that don't know what a water cooler is, but it basically represents where companies and employees gather gossip. Today, that might be Teams, it could be Slack, but I tried to avoid that. So if I did not initiate any outbound conversations to create or to propagate angst around this. But if I received inbound communications about that, what I would, such as, well, have you heard, or are you putting your resume together? Have you put your resume out? How do you think that's going to impact us? I just redirected the conversation and put it back on the goals. So in terms of response to management, I was lucky that I had a manager who did reach out to me to see, do a gut check. How are you doing? And my reaction was basically, I used deflection and focus to get back on point. I said, well, here's the situation. It's out of my control. Here's what I control. I know what my job is, and here's what I'm doing about it, and back on the goals and nose on the grindstone. I think what that did is probably won me some praise in my manager's eyes, because it was one less drama that he had to deal with. He had somebody on his team in the district who was accountable ultimately for, those sales objectives, those revenue objectives, as well as trying to have somebody on there keeping the team going. So
Sorry.
that's sort of my 2 cents in a nutshell about what helped me. But it was an attitude that led to behaviors that were focused on not just myself, but the company, and about the goals and the mission of that company.
This is Wendy. Sorry, I think it's me. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I think it says Mary Clark. Mary, thank you for sending me your link. I had trouble getting into the Zoom. I had so many different links that I am sure the right one was in there.
So Wendy, I think you missed my intro, which I said we were going to have Liz, and I think as we had discussed earlier, Liz talk. And in fact, now is the time for you to chime in and give your.
No, I heard that. I heard that, and you said,
Okay.
and Wendy's not on the call, but and I was. At any rate, Liz, you made some really, really good points, and resiliency and deflection are really key. I also had that experience where when people started complaining and worrying, just trying to pivot the conversation to, okay, what's the work that we need to get done right now? Let's focus on that right now, was really useful. But when you know that your Candace is asking for some help, when you know that a management change is coming, a merger or an acquisition, it definitely brings up anxiety for people. It's very uncomfortable. Who's going to stay, who's going to leave, who's going to be my manager, and it can be stressful. And the first thought that I have in reflecting on this is, if you were thinking about leaving a company, it's a good time to leave. You can get away from all the drama and move on, move forward in a positive way. But one thing that in the last major merger I was involved in, the one thing that I told my team was that this was actually going to create more opportunities within the company for them, because we became a bigger company, and so there were more departments that they could become a part of, and it proved true. I worked for Space Systems L'Oreal, also known as SSL, joined SSL in 2006. And a year later, L'Oreal, the corporate parent, L'Oreal, merged its Skynet group with Telesat. And so we became partial owners of Telesat. And at that time, I was part of the acquiring company. And so it impacted me in a whole different way. And I felt kind of bad that I was taking over someone else's job. Someone at corporate was let go, and they gave me the corporate position in addition to, so I did corporate communications in addition to the marketing communications for the satellite manufacturing division. Subsequently, we were sold a couple of times, but the biggest deal was Digital Globe and Space Systems L'Oreal were merged to become Maxar. And at that time, nobody knew how things were going to go, but it became apparent Digital Globe had a much larger communications organization than we did. And so they were kind of put in charge. And I knew I was getting towards the end of my career. I could see the redundancies. I was at a fairly senior level, so if they were looking to save money, I would be a good person to lay off. And I also knew that I wanted to start up my own business and do consulting whenever the position ended. So what I discovered, and it was really interesting. I mean, I learned about a whole nother culture. There were some great people, but one thing that was difficult for me was I went from direct communications with the president of the division and the CEO of the corporation to having like 3 layers of management between me and that senior level. And when you're working in public relations, that means everything that you want to get approved for public disclosure has to go through all of these different layers. And often it was really urgent that things get done. And there was one time that my manager's manager told me I was being disrespectful because I asked her to approve something within an hour. And it was something that the president of my division had told me I had to get done. So it was very awkward. But what I, in the long run, what I learned was, these kind of management changes can take a long time. And I think it took about a year between when we created Maxar and when there was a big riff, I think they call it. My manager, the president, all got let go at the same time. Because it took a long time, there were a lot of benefits accruing for me. And in the long run, I think it was worth it to hang on. I did my best. Like Liz said, kept my eye focused on what's the goal, what's the best thing for the company. And there were economic benefits to me for hanging on. So I would say 3 things. Mergers can actually broaden your opportunities within the company. 2, if you're considering a change, it might be good to make it sooner than later, just because there's the anxiety and the uncertainty of the situation. But 3, it can take longer than you expect. And in the meantime, you can be making plans and learning from being a part of a different culture. So with that, I wonder if there are any questions.
Yeah, I'm looking for questions. And I would say one of the things I would say, picking up on Wendy said and Liz, is as you're going through this and as you're facing these kinds of situations and keeping yourself focused, doing your job, positioning yourself, to possibly not be one of those who is let go, but because you're so focused and you've done so good, or B, that you are learning things and you're making more connections. And that gets to one of the things that we're always talking about in our mentorship working group, as well as SSPI-WISE in general, which is networking. And when you see that things are something you should be doing all the time. And that way, when you're faced with a situation where maybe they're going to be downsizing and layoffs, or maybe there's a merger or acquisition coming, you've got connections, people you reach out to, people you talk to in the industry, whether it's in the company, a company that maybe your company is thinking of buying. I mean, these things, as Wendy said, can take a long time. If you look at Inmarsat and Viasat, if you look at Intelsat and SES, these are things these are major M&A activities, but they take a long time to happen. And establishing and maintaining the relationships with people both in your own company, in the other company, as well as more broadly in the industry, helps you. That gives you the resiliency. That gives you the cushion to bounce from, if you will, which is part of what resiliency is about. And it's really important to do that, because that helps you understand where you are, helps you understand what's going on in the industry, or perhaps some other part of some other industry that might be related, where your skills and experience can be equally good, equally useful, and you can move to that. So that's kind of my first 2 cents. And I would hope that somebody else might like to chime in either with a question, somebody must have a question, or with some other experience. Some of you have experience. Tamara.
Yes, I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't see. Well, it wasn't in the chat. You just had your little hand up there.
Oh,
And it
okay.
blended into the background with all
blended
the
all
colorful
in.
background.
Okay, I'm gonna add myself here so I can join you guys. So first of all, let me just thank you all for your perspectives, and maybe I'll bring Elizabeth back in because she was so helpful in contributing here. So I have never been in a merger and acquisition. Most of my professional career, actually probably all of my professional career, with a very small window, has been in nonprofit field. And so M&A is not necessarily the process, but one of the associations I worked with was major association. I worked for the American Institute of CPAs. That's huge. And so similarly is the restructuring process, right? When all of a sudden you find yourself, oh, we're going through a restructuring and a new president's coming in and a new idea of how we do things is happening. And it's extremely disconcerting. And at the time that was happening in my career, I was actually very, very junior, very junior in my career. I wasn't even management yet. And so it was actually extremely scary. But what I want to share is that what I personally found to be really helpful in that moment was to be willing to participate in change. So the restructuring required cross-functional teams to, navigate what does this look like and how do these groups work together and what should happen. And so I was able to be a part of that. And I went on to get an opportunity to be in management because I was positioned well from having participated there in those aspects of what was happening at the time. And also, to be able to have an understanding of where is the company going now, right? So I really appreciated what Wendy was talking about, doing her best to contribute to this change that was happening. And then Elizabeth, oh my gosh. Yes, all the people who want to have your ear. And it's a drag, right? People pulled on your ear to tell you stuff, and mostly it's negative, and mostly it's fear-based, and it's resistant. It's change resistant, which is not helpful when you know that change is coming, right? Having a change resistant attitude is the exact opposite of what you need in that moment. What you actually need in that moment is, where do I fit into this flow of change, or how can I? The last thing I wanted to share is that I was fortunate enough to be able to go into management from there, but at some point I actually did have to leave that company. But having had those experiences, that cross-functional experience, is a skill that wound up going on my resume, right? So that was a useful thing to have been able to say, I didn't just do my job, but I also was part of this change process. And so I think that as we think about these dramatic corporate changes, that we also should think about how these experiences help us in developing us as professionals in our fields.
Very good.
Great
Very
points.
good points, Tamara. Mary, I see that you have a hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to share my experience. Ours was my previous employer was a large retail organization, and I was in HR there, and they restructured that role and took them all out of the stores and went more of like a centralized call center type of HR set up. And so we were told in the fall that, our positions were being eliminated, and we had to still stick through. There was a couple opportunities and a couple frustrating points from that particular message. One was, if depending on your tenure, you could get a certain severance if you stayed through the next spring season, so that you could help participate and support the stores in a spring hire, which is a very stressful time. So that was a little frustrating because we'd have to stick through all the holidays again and go through all the stress of trying to get the store staffed for spring. But for those of us, and that included me, who was with the company for 19 years, there was a very nice severance associated with that. If we stuck through, help support the store, maintain that positive image as well as attitude. So I think a lot of the points that both Wendy and Liz made were very valid, is that you have choices. Okay, I was with the company for 19 years. Do I just want to walk away and start fresh and give up this potential severance that was a very nice severance, or do I stick through the frustrating spring hire so that I could get all of that? And then what my other option could have been was leave, or even also apply for positions that they were adding to help support this new service center position. And so it's something that I think you just have to decide for yourself, what's best for me. Do I want to stick and support a company that is eventually going to let me go, even though there's some money involved? Do I want to try for a new position because I've been here forever and I know that they've supported me in a lot of my roles? Or do I just want to start fresh? And so for me, I stuck through the end and finished my time with them and just went my own way. And that's how I got involved and hired through AVL. And even though I started out in HR and I worked through some other positions, I also am now in a new role, learning a new field in software development. So even though some of that was kind of negative and some of it was positive, I decided to make the best of it, stick through it, get on and try something new, because I've been in retail my whole life. So this is my first time in manufacturing. And so not only have I gained those skills, I also felt like I left an image that was positive, and I didn't burn any bridges. So I think those are some important things to really think about. And you just got to really decide what's going to be best for you and lay out all those options on the table for yourself.
Yeah, not burning bridges is a very important part of the process. Joan, did you have a hand up? Yes, you say you have a hand up. I see it there.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I like what everybody's saying. And of course, I've been involved in several, and Andrea knows that, where we were in the VSAT business that transitioned quite aggressively. So based on my experience, I think all of us had to take a bigger picture of where your business is and how mergers and acquisitions is an evolution of the business. And once you take that into consideration, it's not personal. You're involved in a product line, or you're involved in an economic change of your industry, whether it's growing in a product line where a company value your inputs, or you're consolidating because the marketplace has shrunk. And once you understand that bigger picture, you take it out of a personal mode. So that's number one. It's inevitable. Mergers and acquisitions are inevitable in any industry, and ours in particular. The second point I'd like to make is that on a personal front, I was always involved in sales and marketing. So I was always a client-facing person for my company. And with that, it's important to understand that even in the time of crises and personal turmoil, you still have to put out the best of you, because you're not only doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for your client and your organization. And people remember that. And that's where your jump points from your future career goes. If you just collapse and decide to take a very selfish role, for example, in my case, I was leading a successful marketing team, and I had job offers that I had to turn down because I knew the timing in that particular situation was hard, because I didn't want my clients to know that the company was going in a turmoil. I certainly didn't want my sales team to feel abandoned. So I chose to stay, and that paid off for me. So each one of us have to decide what is the best person, the best of you that you can bring to the party. And I think it's important to accept that and know that it's not a personal situation as much as it's an industry, as an organization, it's a product line situation. And you have an opportunity and you have a choice.
Yeah, so I think there's a line in The Godfather about that. Anyway, it's but I would love to have questions. There are a lot of people on this call, and many who I don't even know. And I would actually love to hear if any of you have experiences or questions for any of us or anybody else whose name you might see and recognize. One thing I will add to this point about and that Wendy made and Joan made, which is that you also in looking out for yourself, I've been in a situation where if it's possible, and this is something you have to prepare yourself for, in addition to all the networking that you do, is to understand what your situation is, what your assets are that you have within the question. Yes, Lilac, I will get to in just a sec. But to be able to negotiate where your endpoint might be. And if you're having been told, in my case, for example, okay, we've done this merger is happening and we're not going to need you anymore. I was able to say, okay, I have this many weeks of sick leave, this many weeks of vacation. Can you add, so many more weeks onto it, and that'll take me to the time when I'm vested in my, benefits. And be prepared to speak up for yourself. Feel empowered to be able to have some control over the process. So now I'm going to go, Lilac, you have a question.
I do. So thank you, ladies. This is such an interesting topic. I have personally been involved in M&As from all directions. I've been a part of due diligence teams. I've been acquired. I've been part of transition plans, domestically, internationally. I've sort of done it all. One of the things that I find most challenging, especially when acquired, is that during the due diligence, we all put out our best foot forward, right? We tell them all the great things about our company. And then once you get acquired, the integration starts and a lot of warts get discovered along the way. So as a middle management or an executive, how do you suggest that the decision has been made? They've acquired us. You now want to appear valuable to the acquiring company, yet you have to tell them that there's some cleanup work that has to be done that they may or may not have known during the due diligence process. So how do you not come across as a negative Nelly, or whatever is the euphemism you want to use for someone who brings bad news, while appearing to be valuable? Like, how do you cross that gap, if that makes sense? This is why I couldn't quite type the question. Do you ladies understand the question that I'm trying to say? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know, Wendy, if you wanted to take that, or I see Mary nodding in the background there. And I didn't know if she wanted to take it on as well. Wendy, you want to start?
Well, I'm not sure I've had that exact experience. I certainly know what you're talking about. It was always the other side had the warts. But I guess you do need to be loyal to your new management team. And if what's most important for them as a company is to understand the weaknesses that they weren't aware of. I think that if you can try to present it in a positive way, like, I really want to work with you to solve this. This has been a frustration. Now that we have the new management team, we can tack this together, and I want to help. Might be a way to kind of turn it in your favor a bit.
Mary, did you have a thought?
With, I
That's
loved,
something that sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I love that point of the warts. And my daughter was just laid off from AT&T after 14 years because her cybersecurity unit was purchased. And her mistake, I would say, was to wait too long until they didn't do a transition until the week that they were supposed to be laid off. And then she said, but if you did this, this, and this, you could smooth out this process and keep these huge clients that they had for a longer period of time. So a lot of it is timing so that you don't appear up front like whining and complaining about the warts. So it's a lot of, a good part of it is about the timing of when do you go in and offer help. That was just a point I wanted to make, really. That's it.
Could I ask something?
Yeah.
I would like to say from marketing and sales standpoint, we always face that problem because when you're in a sales mode, and I was as a vice president on marketing and sales, having to be on the selling team to these prospective buyers. And then after the acquisition, I'm on the side having to make it happen. And of course, that changes your perspective on the marketplace and your resource. I think it's important that you look at it, that the situation has changed. Just be as upfront as you can to say that the way you presented before was under a certain circumstance. I mean, for example, we were AT&T at one time, and you have the AT&T resource and brand name and value and whatever and so forth. Then you go into a different company. It doesn't matter what company it is when you're merged. The circumstances change. And so if you're logical and rational in identifying those market conditions or your business conditions that changed, and yes, these situations that will make it more problematic. And so you can surface it in a very objective, business-like manner and let them know these are the changes that need to be done and recommendations at least you're coming forward with. I think people would accept that and knowing that it's changed. For example, when you go from one large organization to another, the business culture change, and that affects a lot of things. Another is administratively, the accounting system change, and that affects your revenue projections and whatnot. And even the legal terminology change because your brand has changed. So there are a lot of factors that affect a situation. So you cannot say they should hold you accountable. And yes, there are wars, but it just situation changed. So you can logically and rationally present that as changing elements. And this is a problem that we're faced with. And here's some suggestions you offer and leave it at that.
And I'll pick up, Joan, on that and take it over to Nina's question in terms of getting opportunities to switch to a different team or division or location as things. And some of that is what Wendy addressed a little bit. And I think Liz as well. And if you then wants to chime in, but I think that gets back to my point about, and Joan's point about being aware of the broader business situation. And that gets back to my network. If you,
I can take that
how do
if you want.
how do you navigate the opportunities within a larger company, when you said where you might have different opportunities, knowing people and having contact with people who are in the other parts of the company, both the company you're in and the company that is the broader company you're going to be a part of. making those connections, and it's not necessarily gossiping at the water cooler, it's sharing information. Saying, hey, find who's a different team or a different location, and you have some information that's useful for them. Share some information, share a link to something, share video, share expertise or something that you have learned, and say, I thought this might be useful. And that's a way to start a conversation with the people on the other team, in order to get yourself known to them and to find a position there. So I don't know, Liz, did you have some thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I think it's the question boils down to, do I move inside and explore, or do I explore outside? So I think what I would point to first would be, Tamara made a great point. Mary also touched on this, which is change. I think before you make a move, I would advise somebody to check internally. What is your attitude towards change? And also, do you exhibit the behaviors to, embrace change, which I think is a key indicator for your resiliency thermometer. So I happen to, change has been a constant companion. It's not a thing. It's a welcome companion that I roll into and love. I would say really do an internal gut check first to know yourself before you do anything. Second is, and I just literally did this, I've done this early in my career and I'm doing it mid-career. I just did this mid-career, is to know what your strengths are, to know what your top skills are, and where can they be best utilized. And I did that through, I think it was the Clifton Strengths Finder, and know your top 5, know your top 10. See if there are areas within the organization, if your role's going away, or if your program's going away, it's being collapsed, where you can apply those, and then look at the new organization's goals. Do you still identify with those? Do they resonate with you? If yes, and you can support that using your strengths in a different area, why not? If the answer is no, and that you really don't handle that change well, and you need to keep doing what you're doing, which is fine because it's not for everybody, then maybe that's the time when you look outside.
Yeah, Wendy?
Well, I think I know, Nina, you work at a really large organization. I wonder if there's the opportunity to reach out to someone in management that's at a level where they're overseeing a number of different divisions, and in particular, the division that you might be interested in. I'm thinking also maybe you can reach out to peers in other organizations and find out what their needs are, or if they know what their needs are. But I think, your manager may not know what the opportunities are in other groups, but their manager may, or their manager's manager may, and they're looking for people with talent and skills that you probably have. So I'd say, you need to reach out beyond your organization and try to make some connections there.
Network. Always network, and some of which is supported by SSPI broadly, as well as SSPI-WISE, and go to events that you can find within the organization. There may be organizational programs, or I know it sounds weird, but and nowadays maybe there's not as much of this, but there may be company groups, whether it's sports or anything else. There's something that you can get involved in to show that you're a team player, that show that you like to share things that you know and that you learn. That's all a key part of demonstrating your resilience, because you develop the cushion by having the relationships, but you also show that that's something that you like to do, that you want to do for the organization, not just for yourself. Porvi, I see your question, and I know Tamara's going to send you information. There's some great courses, online courses. Tamara, I think there was just I guess maybe it was Space News about the online space course, satellite industry courses. I just got an email about those, and also our mentorship program, and which we'll still take some more questions from people, but this is probably a good time. And Wendy, I don't know if you want to do it or you want me to make a pitch for people to recognize that we are going to be in the next couple of months asking for people to be sending out information for people to apply to be mentors or to have mentors for our next cohort starting next year. And so now that we have you on the list, Porvi, we'll certainly make sure to get you looped in for that. Does anybody else have other questions on resilience or M&A or industry dislocation?
While I'm watching for questions, and Andrea's watching for questions, I just want to say, yes, SSPI has something called Space Business Qualified, which is an online training course that gives you a really broad level of understanding of what is the business of space and satellite. So in other words, you may have skills in this one area, but Space Business Qualified intends to give you broad industry-wide understanding. It is not a training course as much as it's a understanding course, if I can put it that way. So it's a very useful place to start, but I also would definitely, given in Porvi's situation, she's in school. Porvi, I'm guessing you're a she. Okay, thank you. Okay, Porvi's in school, and so so thinking about reaching out to your professors, I would start right there, reaching out to your professors and just asking if there are some other universities in the area that they can recommend that you take courses for cross-training, you know, where you get transfer credits. So that's an idea. But also, you know, there may be some internship opportunities, even in the smallest sense, right? Like even if you have an admin internship with a company that's in the area that you want, it gets you in the area that you want to be in. It gets you an opportunity to see what the industry is like and to get to know some people. So so there's lots of different ways, and definitely I'm hoping that our mentorship team will have some better ideas than that. But I just wanted to throw that out there. So
Joan.
Could I ask something, Tamara? Is there any way that you might be able to add some more programs for these podcasts where mid-career women can get on the various speaking engagements or getting their face in front of SSPI?
Elevating Women Working Group.
Yes, I'd like to see more activity along that line.
yeah.
Is that something you could help us with?
Well, we have a whole, as Andrea was mentioning, there's a whole working group dedicated to that. We have some new leads in the area that particular working group has been kind of snake bit because our leads kept getting moved or having babies or going someplace else. But I'm excited. Our former president of SSPI-WISE, Jomia Lay, is going to actually be one of the working group leads along with Divya and Tony Lee and Charlotte, I think. I'm getting her name wrong. But anyway, the point is that we have a new team that will be giving some focused attention. I'm looking forward to that. And we'll see what evolves from that. I also get to say at this moment, we just announced or are about to announce that we're extending the deadline for 20 under 35 and Mentor of the Year nominations. That is another space where women get to put their faces out publicly. The deadline was next week, Monday. It's now going to be a week from there. So Monday the 5th instead of the 29th. Nominate some of your mentors and mentees and get women's names recognized. There's lots of different ways that we get women up front, and we should employ all of those ways. So.
And actually, that's one of the points, Tamara, and back to the question about how you decide and how you find out about, what the opportunities might be in other parts of an organization. And back to letting people be aware of who you are and what you know. And that's not necessarily for someone at, still in school, but even at a junior level in the industry, if you can reach out and, as Tamara said, to the Elevating Women, if you have something that you know about, if you are, Liz, for example, said, I know about this stuff. I'd be happy to take on, participating in a panel and talking about it. And that's the kind of thing you need to do, to say, I know about X, Y, or Z. I have experience with mergers and acquisition. I have experience in a specific aspect of the industry. And I'd be happy to participate in a podcast, or I'd be happy to help organize a podcast or a panel at the satellite show or some other event. And step up, offer, volunteer to be part of some of those kinds of activities, which is a way of extending your own brand, if you will, and letting people be aware of who you are, and finding out then what the opportunities might be, and where, as when he said, where you might fit, whereas I guess Mary was talking about, where do you fit? Wendy.
I just wanted to give a little plug for the mentoring group, and to mention our last 2 meetings were canceled. We had some problems with our Zoom. We are getting back on track, and our next meeting will be August 14th. We encourage everybody to join us. You don't have to be a mentor or a mentee to come to our monthly meetings. We try to incorporate some networking in those meetings, and we also encourage you to ask for mentors and to volunteer to be mentors, as Andrea mentioned. So what's the best way to tell people how to, if they want to become members of the mentoring committee, or if they want to attend some of our meetings, what's the best way to get them onto the mailing list?
Well, we have the mailing list. They can reach out to me. One of the things I do want to make a point that going forward, while in the past the invitations and the Zooms have come from me, and we're going forward, we're going to be using this SSPI-WISE Leads Zoom, and we'll be sending out a note about that in advance of the August 14th meeting, which will be our next meeting. And so I think reaching out to one of us, and I don't know if Tamara wants to. I think Tamara has enough on her plate.
Well, there's actually also an email address specifically for the mentoring working group, in which, of course, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I will dig that up and share it with everybody who was at this particular meeting, so that we have it. And so anybody who wants to, and the mentoring working group can use that as part of, hey, if you want to be in touch with us, email us here, and it'll get to the whole mentorship leadership team.
Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate that. Were there other questions or comments or suggestions for how to develop resiliency other than wearing very good bouncy shoes? I have. Well,
and bouncy clothes, right? Because stuff has to bounce off you.
having and it's not as weird as it sounds. Having bouncy shoes, having the ability to feel that you can move around, that you can move freely within an industry or within a company, feeling that I'm not glued to the floor, to this desk, to this computer, that I have skills. I will want to find out how I can gain more skills, and I have relationships, and I want to develop more relationships. All of that is your big resiliency bubble that helps you bounce along. I know I'm getting bouncy shoes and bubbles and all this, but it's not a bubble. You don't want to be in a bubble. Bad thing.
And I think Joan made a really good point, that, or was it Mary, that you have to not take it personally. Yeah. It's that can be the hardest thing to do, but it really isn't about you as a person. It's about what the company needs at this point in time. And I think it can help emotionally to realize it's not you.
It's not personal, it's business. And
We have three minutes left here, but I want to draw our attention to
Katina had a
Katina's.
question.
oh, Katina
I was
has,
gonna
I
say,
see a
Katina has a
question.
question in the chats, yes.
You describe a situation where you or Kai turned a yes into a no during an M&A process or integration. I'm not sure I understand. Turned a yes into a no, meaning that as opposed to the other way around? I don't know. Katina, do you want to speak up and tell us what you mean exactly? Unmute yourself. Tina?
Tina, are you here? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
I see her.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Switching between Google and Zoom mic difficulties. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you have no camera. I don't know what's wrong with your camera.
All right.
okay.
It's all
But
right.
we can
Sorry.
hear
Sure.
you. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. My bandwidth is a little low, so nixing the video for a minute. Yeah, so turning a yes or turning a no. Sorry, yes, I did type that backwards. So turning a no into a yes. Thank you. Forgot my coffee this morning, everyone. So yeah, and I think some of the other people kind of touched on this, where there's kind of, you're in this moment of flux, things are evolving, and sometimes some no's come our way, like, oh, nope, we don't need the team that you're on anymore. So how do you kind of turn that into a yes, and kind of take that opportunity mindset and evolution mindset that you guys are talking about, and kind of help you if you say are choosing to maybe stay, looking to stay within the new organization.
Wendy, you want to take that?
Well, I think sometimes, the new management, there's a lot that they don't know. And if you can take an educational approach, like you may not realize, but these things have been happening in the background, and you're really going to need somebody to be doing that. Or just because it's probably the truth that if you're being let go or being marginalized, that to speak up and show how your accomplishments are benefiting the company, and that it's going to be a real loss. I think that really can change people's minds.
Yeah, it's back to advocating for yourself and having, and that's one of the things that we talked in, is even back to Liz's point about doing more than what's expected, to be able to say, by the way, this is what I've been doing over and above for the last however long period of time. And these are things that you may not realize, skills that I have that have not necessarily been needed up till now, but that could benefit the new organization.
One thing that I would add to that on this particular question is to look at it strategically from the acquiring company or the person that's making that decision. What are their goals and objectives? Because you may be doing all those things, and if it does not align with the other person's goals and objectives, or the acquiring company's goals and objectives, it won't matter. So you have to be more strategic about it and show them what's in it for them, how whatever their goals and objectives are, what you've been doing or what you bring to the table or what that team brings to the table actually does align, and then bring your metrics to the table to tell the story.
Could I add something?
Yes,
Since
Joan,
I have
quickly,
been,
because we're about done.
okay, I've been involved in some of these things, and the manager who's letting go may or may not have a whole lot of flexibility, because they're following orders as well. So again, important not to take it personally. But what has worked for me in the past, when an employee would say that they're doing a specific project, and they ask for a different date of discharge or termination, and often that gives you that reason to stay on and may actually end up be extended even further, because now you're demonstrating why you could contribute. And that would give them the opportunity to say, okay, we can negotiate for, I can give you an extension, but you're on the list that, the person may or may not have the right or authority to change. So I would say using those kind of negotiation approach may work better.
Yeah, good point, Joe. Good point.
Yeah, I think those are all really helpful points. Thank you.
But Tamara, I know we're 3 minutes over.
Yes. Yes, we are. And so I'm removing spotlights from everybody. I'm thanking everybody. Mentorship, this is a working group. This was a really fantastic session. Thank you so much for bringing this conversation to us and allowing us to engage in it. It is a challenging conversation. Obviously, I think by the tenor of the questions, people have questions. This is something we've wrestled with in lots of different ways, and I'm really grateful that the mentorship team opened up the discourse around it and allowed us to engage it. So with that, I am going to shut us off because we're over time and I have to be very respectful of our time. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. I apologize for difficulties with the link. It is a new link. Share it with everybody. I will, of course, I sent out another notice, so do not share your link. Send the registration link to other people, because if you send your link, everybody shows up as you, and then we don't know which one is the real you. So, we don't want to do that. So anyway, thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time. I've learned a lot today. Let's all give a round of applause to our mentorship team and our panelists, Wendy and Elizabeth and Andrea. And with that, have a great rest of Thursday.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Tamara. Thanks.
Thank you.